Hi, welcome to Salesforce for Beginners. The other day I created a video for you guys on how to create a pick list to capture a contact's favorite beer. However, one of the problems with that pick list is that we have this other value down here. One of the common issues that I find as an administrator is that often we want to capture what that other favorite beer is. Especially if we start seeing trends with people choosing a specific beer, we may want to add that to our pick list so that way users don't have to continually press other than actually enter what the favorite beer is. The way to do this is to basically create a second field, which I've already done, called favorite beer other, and then to create a validation rule that will not allow the user to save the record without first entering in a value here. So you can see, just using standard Salesforce functionality, if I were to save this field, the record is going to save just fine. Now some of you may just say, why don't we just require this field favorite beer other as well? Well, the issue with that is if for whatever reason they chose Sam Adams, then the user would always be forced to put a favorite beer other field here, which wouldn't really make much sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a validation rule that when a user selects the other value, it's going to throw an error and it's going to force them to actually enter a value down here in favorite beer other before they can save the record. To start, we're going to go over to setup. And since we're working with the contact object, we're going to go to the contacts object, select validation rules, and new. The first thing you want to do is give your validation rule a name. I typically like to give it something that's meaningful, so I've selected favorite beer other here. And then you can get a description down here which is telling what this validation rule does, which is good for yourself as well as future admins. We'll say forces user to enter a value when other is selected. Now here's the tricky part. If you're not familiar with validation rules or coding in general, you may not know which option to choose down here when you're creating for your error condition. So I'm going to kind of walk through this with you guys, and I've copy and pasted this, so by the magic of copy and pasting you can see the value down here. And so what we're going to use is the AND function. And what the AND function does is basically compares whether or not certain values are true, certain conditions are true, and then returns either a true or false value. Now when it comes to validation rule, if the condition is true, that means that the user is going to see the error option. If the value is false, meaning that, okay, they didn't select other, they selected, say, Sam Adams, then the condition is false, which means that the user can go ahead and save the record. So what this AND is testing for here is it's saying and because favorite beer is a pick list, we have to use the ISPICKVAL, and ISPICKVAL favorite beer is other, and favorite beer other is blank, and that's what this function is checking. And so here you want to check your syntax. Everything looks good. And then next what you want to do is put down what that error message is going to appear when the user tries to save the record when this condition is true. Here I'm going to say, please enter the contact's favorite beer before saving the record. And typically what I like to do is you can either put this at the top of the page and or you can put it right under the field. So here we'll put it right under favorite beer other, and we'll go ahead and save our validation rule. One thing to note is that by default, the validation rules when you create them are checked active. But one thing to note, if your validation rule isn't working properly, the first thing I like to check is just to make sure that it is actually active. So now we'll go back to our record. And you'll notice I was able to save it before with the other value here. And now when I go to edit the record and actually try to save the record, it's going to say, okay, error, invalid data. And right under the field, like I asked it to, it says, please enter the contact's favorite beer before saving this record. So now I'll come down here, I'll type in Modelo. Now the condition is actually satisfied. And I hit save, and now we've captured that great information that heretofore we would have lost. I've also put like the code in my YouTube video, as well as it's on my blog over at SFDC Guru. So I hope this was helpful, and please +1 me if you like this video.